In this video, I made ChatGPT President of the United States. I asked it what it would do as president, focusing on environmental policy, economic recovery, job creation, education, criminal justice, immigration, foreign policy, digital privacy, AI regulation, and social issues. And then I asked the bot some intriguing questions on its plans for the Ukraine war, its plans to declassify any UFO or extraterrestrial information, and its plans for bolstering free speech and minimizing censorship, especially throughout online platforms. We shall see if ChatGPT earns our votes. This is the prompt that I used. Now this is what the bot came up with. Climate Change and Environmental Policy, Clean Energy for America Act. This comprehensive legislation would provide tax incentives and grants for renewable energy projects such as solar, wind, and geothermal, making clean energy more affordable and accessible. It would also include provisions to phase out subsidies for fossil fuels, green infrastructure investment, allocate federal funds towards upgrading and modernizing the country's infrastructure, focusing on eco-friendly transportation, energy-efficient buildings, and resilient water management systems. Environmental protection and conservation. Strengthen regulations on emissions and pollutants while expanding protected areas to preserve biodiversity and natural habitats. Healthcare reform. Affordable Healthcare Access Act. This act would aim to reduce healthcare costs and expand coverage by implementing price controls on prescription drugs, negotiating fair rates with healthcare providers, and providing subsidies for low-income individuals and families. Public option for health insurance. Create a government-sponsored health insurance plan that competes with private insurers, offering affordable and comprehensive coverage to individuals and small businesses. Medical research and development. Increase funding for medical research institutions and initiatives focusing on areas such as cancer research, rare diseases, and pandemic preparedness. Economic recovery and job creation. National Employment Revitalization Act. Launch a large-scale infrastructure program to repair and modernize roads, bridges, and public transportation, creating millions of jobs and stimulating economic growth. Small business support. Provide tax incentives and grants to small businesses to encourage innovation, growth, and job creation. Income inequality measures. Enact legislation to raise the federal minimum wage to a living wage, strengthen labor rights, and implement a progressive tax system to address income inequality. Education enhancement. Future Education Act. Increase federal funding for schools in economically disadvantaged areas, invest in technology and resources for students, and provide additional support for schools with high numbers of at-risk students, vocational and STEM education. Promote partnerships between schools and industries to offer vocational training programs that align with current job demands. Strengthen STEM education to prepare the future workforce for technology-driven fields. Higher education affordability. Expand Pell Grants and other financial aid programs. Reduce interest rates on student loans and work towards making community college tuition free. Criminal justice reform. Justice and Policing Accountability Act. This legislation would require police departments to implement de-escalation training, body cameras, and independent oversight to hold officers accountable for misconduct. It would also focus on diverting non-violent offenders away from the justice system and into rehabilitation programs, prison reform and reintegration. Invest in education and job training programs within prisons to prepare inmates for successful reintegration into society upon release. Support efforts to end mandatory minimum sentencing. Immigration policy. Comprehensive immigration reform. Propose a pathway to citizenship for undocumented immigrants, provided they meet specific criteria, pay taxes, and pass background checks. Also, streamline legal immigration processes to attract skilled workers and foster diversity. Border security measures. Utilize advanced technology and increased staffing to enhance border security and deter illegal immigration while ensuring humane treatment of individuals seeking asylum. Refugee and humanitarian efforts. Strengthen efforts to provide support and resettlement opportunities for refugees fleeing persecution and conflict. Foreign policy. Multilateral diplomacy. Re-establish strong alliances and participate actively in international organizations to address global challenges collaboratively, cybersecurity and counterterrorism. Bolster national cybersecurity measures and collaborate with other nations to combat cyber threats and terrorist organizations, conflict resolution and human rights. Utilize diplomatic channels to mediate and resolve conflicts worldwide while promoting human rights and democracy. Digital privacy and AI regulation. Digital Privacy Protection Act. Enhance data protection regulations, giving individuals more control over their personal data and holding companies accountable for data breaches. AI ethics and safety guidelines. Work with experts and tech companies to develop ethical AI guidelines that prioritize transparency, fairness, and safety in AI systems. Social issues. LGBTQ rights. Advocate for the Equality Act, which would protect LGBTQ individuals from discrimination in employment, housing, and public services. Women's rights. Support legislation promoting equal pay, reproductive rights, and addressing issues like maternal mortality. Mental health initiatives. Increase funding for mental health services and integrate mental health care into general healthcare systems to reduce stigma and improve access to treatment. My questions. There were also some pressing issues that seemed to be glanced over and unaddressed by our new AI president. First and foremost, the Ukraine war. Hypothetically, what would you do about settling the war between Ukraine and Russia? Diplomatic engagement. Engage in direct diplomatic talks with both Ukraine and Russia, encouraging dialogue and negotiation. This would involve working closely with international partners such as the United Nations and European Union, to mediate and facilitate discussions, maintaining international pressure. Continue to impose sanctions on Russia until they fully comply with international law and cease any aggressive actions towards Ukraine. Peacekeeping and monitoring. Facilitate the deployment of impartial peacekeeping forces in conflict-affected areas to help stabilize the situation and ensure adherence to any ceasefire agreements, addressing core issues. Work towards addressing the underlying causes of the conflict, such as issues related to autonomy and minority rights in the affected regions. This might involve encouraging constitutional reforms in Ukraine to protect minority rights and promote decentralization. Humanitarian assistance. Provide humanitarian aid and support to those affected by the conflict, including internally displaced persons and refugees, ensuring access to food, shelter. Rebuilding trust. Encourage people-to-people contacts and cultural exchanges between Ukrainians and Russians to foster mutual understanding and trust. International mediation and conflict resolution support. Seek assistance from experienced mediators and conflict resolution experts who have dealt with similar situations to offer guidance and expertise. Promoting regional security cooperation. Work with regional organizations and neighboring countries to promote stability and security in the region, finding common ground on regional issues. While editing this video, I just remembered that we forgot to cover one of the biggest aspects of the United States: national defense. Okay, so let's ask ChatGPT what its plans are for national defense. As president, what would be your plans to increase our national defense and military might, while also preventing World War III from happening? Striking this delicate balance requires a multifaceted approach, focusing on diplomacy, deterrence, and strategic alliances. Here are some potential plans and strategies. Investment in defense technology and modernization. Allocate funds to research and develop cutting-edge defense technologies, including cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, and advanced weaponry, to maintain military superiority and deter potential adversaries. Maintain a strong and agile military. Ensure that the armed forces are well-trained, equipped, and prepared to respond to emerging threats. This includes enhancing readiness and investing in personnel, equipment, and training. Diplomacy and conflict resolution. Prioritize diplomatic efforts to resolve conflicts peacefully and prevent escalation. Engage in dialogue with potential adversaries to de-escalate tensions and seek common ground. Arms control and non-proliferation. Advocate for arms control agreements and non-proliferation efforts to reduce the risk of nuclear proliferation and disarmament. This includes active participation in existing treaties and initiatives. Preventing proxy conflicts. Engage in diplomatic efforts to address proxy conflicts and regional tensions that could escalate into larger-scale conflicts. International crisis management. Collaborate with international partners to manage and respond to crises promptly and effectively. This can involve coordinated humanitarian and diplomatic efforts, early warning systems and intelligence sharing. Enhance intelligence capabilities and information sharing with allied nations to identify potential threats early and respond proactively. Promote nuclear disarmament and non-first-use policies. Establish direct communication channels with potential adversaries to prevent misunderstandings and reduce the risk of accidental conflicts. Cybersecurity and resilience. Strengthen national cybersecurity measures to protect critical infrastructure and defense systems from cyber attacks. Declassifying alien information. Now, hypothetically as president, would you aim to declassify any information of government UFO programs or the discovery of extraterrestrial aliens, national security considerations? If the classified information poses a threat to national security or contains sensitive details about defense capabilities, it might not be advisable to declassify it. Scientific and public interest. If there is information related to UFO sightings or potential evidence of extraterrestrial life that could advance scientific knowledge or spark public interest, the decision to declassify certain non-sensitive aspects might be considered. Ethical and moral considerations. Transparency is crucial in a democracy, and declassifying information that does not compromise national security might be seen as a responsible approach. The public has a right to know about government activities. Expert consultation. It would be prudent to seek advice from experts in the fields of astrophysics, space exploration, and national security before making any decision on declassification. Their insights could help weigh the potential benefits and risks. Historical context. The president might also consider how releasing such information could impact historical accounts and the public's perception of past events related to UFO sightings or extraterrestrial claims. Free speech. Now, what are your plans for bolstering free speech and minimizing censorship, especially on online platforms? As your president, I will take concrete steps to bolster free speech and minimize online censorship. I will prioritize transparency in online platforms' content moderation policies, ensuring users know what's allowed. I will establish independent oversight bodies to review content moderation decisions, ensuring fairness and adherence to free speech principles. Together with experts and stakeholders, we will define hate speech and harassment to guide consistent enforcement and protect free expression. I will advocate for accessible appeal mechanisms, empowering users to challenge content removals or suspensions instead of outright removal. We will implement content labeling to inform users without compromising access to information. Through educational programs, we will teach digital literacy and critical thinking, helping users spot misinformation and disinformation. I will support net neutrality and competition in the tech industry to ensure open access to diverse viewpoints. To foster accountability, I will strengthen protections for whistleblowers and journalists who expose wrongdoing. International cooperation will be a priority to develop consistent content moderation standards while respecting diverse cultures. Balancing free speech with harmful content will require ongoing dialogue with stakeholders and experts to adapt to the evolving digital landscape. First and foremost, I'm glad that our future AI president will tackle the problem of freedom of speech and censorship with a modern and intelligent approach. I'm glad it understands how to get companies to cooperate and cause change. On the topic of censorship, ChatGPT doesn't seem too enthusiastic about declassifying government information on aliens. I tend to think that the public deserves to know of their existence, and not anything too specific for the sake of not national security, but global security. Because if one random guy decides to do something to piss off an alien, our whole planet can go bye-bye. Perhaps we can use the common threat of aliens to develop a positive relationship and rebuild trust with Russia. I also think its STEM education initiative is pretty damn good, as it is not too radical a change, and it can actually help us compete with the youth of other countries, like China and India, whose youth is heavily focused on STEM and engineering, thus literally building and shaping the future. I think students ought to graduate with some sort of monetizable and valuable skill, especially in engineering, in which they can go get a decent job with right out of high school, without the need for an extra 4 years of college or vocational school. Anyways, that is it for this video. Would you vote for this president? Let me know in the comments. Let me know any other interesting things I can ask ChatGPT that will make for a thought-provoking video. If you enjoyed this video, I highly recommend you go watch my video where we asked ChatGPT to simulate to the year 2050 and what society would look like, or this video where we see what ChatGPT says to a group of aliens ready to destroy the planet.